Welcome to First Alarm Family First episode. I was just double checking my notes here. Episode number 35. I'm Jen Herrera alongside Carolyn Acosta. And yes, we are a little biased because we love it when members of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue join us on the show.
Yes, today we're joined by somebody who knows the firehouse and the front lines all too well. We're going to have an honest conversation today with a firefighter who obviously knows what it is, what it entails, and we'll just get started. Mark, can you give us a little bit about your story, how you started in the fire service?
Well, I started when I was about 19 years old. I worked ambulance from about 18 to 19 years old, and then I started with the City of Naples Fire Department. Worked there for a few years, and then I moved on to Dania Beach Fire Department and worked there for a little longer, and then went down to Miami-Dade. So all in all, it's about 34 years, June 7th.
Wow.
Mark, do you remember, 30 something years later, right? But do you remember at what point you decided, hey, I want to be a firefighter? Were you like one of those little boys who always wanted to be a firefighter? Was it something that you realized later on?
In high school, we had a class. I had a social studies teacher who taught a class in senior year, and he would recruit for this class. And what it was like an internship that you could go at lunch, after lunch every day. You would go to an internship, and I thought I wanted to be a cop. And so I went to the Miramar Police Department, and I rode with them for a little bit. And then when I started seeing, all the reports that they had to write, didn't want to have anything to do with that. So then I walked next door to the fire station. They let me come in, open arms, a high school kid, just to pal around. And once I got to see what they did, I was hooked. I was hooked, and that started when I was 15, and they ended up getting me into the fire academy almost immediately after high school. They helped me get into EMT school because there was a wait at the time as well. And this was all in 1990. And then fast forward from there, the job search, and got in the first house and started in the job making $7.48 an hour, which was awesome. We had, it was pretty interesting. We even had one guy go on welfare at the time because he had a large family and making no money.
Wow.
But yeah, fast forward to today, we're finally making a living wage and are able to support ourselves.
Things have changed. Thank goodness. So, Mark, when it comes to mental health, because obviously we're doing the podcast about mental health within the first responders, what have you seen? Has the culture shifted at all at this time from back then?
Absolutely. The culture, and most recently, the biggest shift I think I've ever seen in the fire service was after Surfside. Having been part of that first set of units that arrived there, we knew it was big. We knew this was the biggest thing we had ever seen. So that was probably the biggest shift. Over time, through the years, we've done things like CISD, CISN, that's had different monikers, where I think it goes back as far back as I can remember. Maybe in my early 20s, I was in my first CISN thing, and I was so interested in it back then that I decided to sign up and want to go to help other fire departments if they had, kid drowning or whatever else like that. And I actually believed in it until I had a call when I was a lieutenant in Miami-Dade. I was working in Homestead, and I didn't normally work in Homestead, but every now and then I would go down there. It would be like an open day for me. We went down there, and we had a house fire of one block right behind Station 16, and it was 4 kids and a dad that were stuck in like a duplex, and it was such a heavy call I could tell everybody on not only my crew but the other crews. It was such a heavy call when you have every crew that's on the fire doing CPR, with the exception of my nozzleman, was the only one fighting the fire. And I had asked the battalion chief, I said, you know what, we need CISD for this. I mean, we need to debrief this, like this. And this happened at midnight. And he's looking at me like I was, what are you talking about? You really think so? And I'm like, yeah, this is a big one. And I believed in it until that call. Because we had the debriefing. We had somebody come down from, I think it was Broward. And it was like one guy. He was showing up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Thank God. I mean, the guy was super awesome for coming. But I left that debriefing like going, well, that kind of stuff, and it was like, didn't really, I mean, there were some people that got some stuff out, at the meeting, but I was like, it was just lackluster, there was no good feeling leaving the firehouse at 7 a.m. No, not that you would have a good feeling. It just, there was no good feeling. And that's when I started to disbelieve from that moment forward. And I didn't understand why I was disbelieving. But that led me down this path of about 2 weeks later, I got leveled from this call. And I didn't think I was affected. And to just kind of put a little history on it, my first hit was 18 years old. I was working for the ambulance company, and Hurricane Andrew hit. And then the next week I started working for the fire department. And so I had gone down to Homestead and in 34's area, South Dade, to help out. And I remember just encountering, it was called James Archer Hospital. It's now Homestead Hospital. And the side of the hospital was ripped off, and I had never seen anything like that before. So that was my first hit with PTSD, and I didn't know what it was. I just was like, oh my God, I was overwhelmed. But I remember breaking down right there, like by myself in the ambulance, just going, what am I into?
Right.
And then, this call was such, I thought I had seen quite a few things, I'm pretty resilient, with this, but that call leveled me like I've never. And I don't know if this podcast is the avenue or the forum to get into it, but because I don't want to scare anybody, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad, and it led me down a path that I understand now. I understood from that moment forward why people do what they do, because you feel like you're broken. You absolutely feel like you're broken. And again, I don't want to darken the mood here.
I mean, I think what you're saying, Mark, is something that people are not talking about. What you guys are experiencing, a lot of you guys are experiencing the same thing. You guys are going to these calls. There's human life, that you guys are dealing with. And it's complex trauma. I mean, I think we're, at least for like civilians, the misconception with PTSD, it's like, you think military war vets, they saw, you guys are seeing it all the time. I mean, this isn't something normal that the human brain just like processes and you deal with it. Like, no, it just doesn't. And I think the more people have this conversation, the less you feel alone, and
Right.
the more we can help others.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who retired a couple of years ago, and he did over 7 tours between Afghanistan and Iraq. So he not only worked at Station 2, but he also was deployed multiple times. And his name is Alex Marco, and he said it best, and I'd never heard it said like this before he said it, was when you're in the military, the hit is so acute because war is absolute chaos. It's chaos for 2, 3, 4 years or however long you're there, and so that PTSD hit is so hard and so strong. He said the difference with us is that we do this in trickles over 30 years, and he said so. you can either have it at 1,000 miles an hour in 4 years, or you can have it trickled into your brain over 30 years. And it's become one of those things where, our empathy has to drop as first responders. If you come into this industry with your empathy fully intact, you are setting yourself up for disaster. And it's not to say that we need to not be empathetic. There's a way to be empathetic without internalizing it. And that's what we show the public is how to be empathetic. We're here for you. We're here to help you. We understand. Let's get you going in the right direction. But the minute that you turn into a human being in this job, and this is going to sound terrible, but the minute that you turn into a human being in this job, you are setting yourself up for absolute and utter devastation within your own life. And it's, I played golf with a couple of retirees years ago, and one of them says to me out of nowhere, he says, you know what happens about 2 years after you retire? Your empathy comes back. and I was like, wait, what? What did he just say? He goes, yeah, I was just sitting there with my daughter about 2 years into retirement. I was sitting there watching a movie, and I just started crying. And this guy was one of those hardcore, like your dad, Jen. So like he was like hardcore, doesn't say anything, And he goes, I just started crying. He goes, I didn't even know what that was going on my cheeks. It was so crazy. And what he said it as a cautionary tale, that if you're not prepared for this to happen to you, then you're going to think something's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. So it really does, it's a protective mechanism that we have to implore in ourselves to survive. You have, the minute that you become a human being on a call is the minute that you are going to circle the drain.
Which is so frightening, which is so sad, to be honest, right. Because nobody wants to ever lose that humanness, right, of us. But I agree. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. But with that said, Mark, I'm curious. After the Homestead call, understandably, right, it sounded like you were at one of your lowest points. What they were doing, and when I say they, it sounds like I'm pointing a finger, but I'm not pointing a finger, right? With someone coming in and to do the debriefing and to do the CISM training. What is the answer then? Like when something like that happens, what should be done?
I'm a firm believer, and something that Jason brought up the other day, and it's not something I haven't thought about myself. One thing we don't do in the industry, in the fire academy and paramedic school and EMT school, one thing we don't do is we don't prepare our people for this. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is we're not upfront about you're going to have hits in your life. Yeah. And if we don't teach people how to become self-aware of how they're acting, how they're being, how they're feeling, if we don't teach them how to become self-aware, then they do not understand what's happening to them. And I'll give you, for instance, after that call, and this was again one of the biggest hits in my career. It's up there with about 4. There's about 4 really large hits, but this one was so devastating that I didn't know what was wrong with me. It got to the point where I was arguing with my wife in a Lowe's parking lot in Sunrise, and I blacked out. I was still awake, because the next thing I remember, and still to this day, the next thing I remember, as I woke up sitting in the sand, crisscross applesauce, looking at the sunset going down. And when I had this argument with my wife, it was 10 a.m. Wow. And still to this day, I have no recollection. From that, moving forward with that, what started happening is I started reacting to things inappropriately. I would laugh at things that are not funny. I would get really angry about nothing. Road rage was like off the charts. I was crying. I was actively crying about nothing, like things that were not even sad. I just started crying out of nowhere. It was, and I thought I was going crazy. And if you don't have an understanding of what is happening to you, if you're not given that front loading of information, then you're setting yourself up for disaster. And I didn't, and this is where my wife comes in, is fast forward, this goes on for about a week, and I'm sorry, my dog is growling at me.
My dogs are acting up too, so don't worry.
There. Now you can see. Right. Right. Yeah. So yeah, fast forward about a week or two into this, my wife reached out to one of my mentors, Tony Garcia, who was my captain before this, and she didn't know what to do. She's something wrong with him, and he called me, says, what's going on, and he was not the type of lovey touchy feely kind of guy. They called him the Iceman for a reason, and he said, and so I kind of told him, I said, man, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm kind of going crazy here. I don't know how to control myself. And he then forwarded me on to one of our EMS captains at the time, who got me into a PTSD counselor. So effectively, my wife saved my life. And when I say she saved my life, the day that call was coming in, I was figuring out how to do it. Wow. And it was so crazy that you get this cloud in front of you. And I think if people understand what's coming to them, you get a cloud. When it starts happening, you start to go inwards, and the world around you becomes hazy. It becomes a hazy background. Your family, your friends, everybody around you, it becomes hazy. And you have trouble seeing through it. At the time, I could still see through it because I was trying to plan, all right, how do I do this? And, how do I set them up? And this was, going forward.
You had plans in place. Like you were
strategizing of how to do it, but I could still see at the time, I could still see my family. I could still see my friends, but they were fuzzy. And I'm just trying to describe this to you the best way that I remember it. So they were still fuzzy. And but they were becoming fuzzier by the day, because all I could think about is I'm broken. I'm going to be the guy that's sitting on the couch every week talking to somebody who has no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm going to be, then that's going to fast forward to me becoming the frequent flyer, the crazy guy that we run on all the time. And I'm not going to be that guy. And so you start going down this path that you're just broken. And it's not it. You have had a hit where what PTSD, what's been described to me is it's a disassociation between your right and left side of your brain. And when we make decisions as human beings, we use both sides. Some people use more of one side, but we always use both sides. And that right there was exactly what was happening. I had zero control. And when you go down that road, and you can't control your decision making anymore, you just get like, wow, I'm broken. And what I see in the industry now, what I see with the psychology, let me stop. I went to the therapy, to go see the therapist. He did EMDR. I forgot the electrical disassociation, something like that. Anyway, he waved a pen in front of my eyes. And he said, don't move your head, just... and in about 5 minutes of doing this, I kept asking him, are you hypnotizing me? Am I going to bark at the dog in a movie theater? What's going to happen here? And he did this, and I was lucky. I was lucky because it was like somebody cracked a knuckle in my head. And
That fast?
I went,
That's
it just so happened to work for me that quickly. And I went like this, and he goes, "Oh, there it is." And I go, "There, what is?" And he goes, "Well, how do you feel?" And I said, and all the angst that I had going, it just kind of just melted away. And I go, "Huh, I feel pretty good."
so
And he goes,
crazy.
and I
Wow.
go, "So do I got to be back here next week? Are you going to do this again?" And he goes, "No. You know, if it starts to, come back again." And then he went to this whole explanation of what he was doing and after the fact, but he didn't want to tell me ahead of time, what he was doing, but he was reconnecting my brain. And that one action by my wife calling my mentor, somebody that I was going to listen to, who then called his resources and got me in there fast enough before I was too far gone. And the longer it lasts, apparently the harder it is to break. That's just what I've been told. I don't know if that's true or not. I was lucky. From that point forward, I was able to go, okay, now I have a memory of what this looks like. I was lucky to be able to come out the other side, and I have a memory of what this looks like. I now have recall in my body to go, okay, I'm not acting like a crazy. I was really like super skeptical. I was like looking around, like, okay, this guy just cut me off in traffic. How am I reacting? Am I okay? Do I want to kill this guy? What do I want? No, I don't want to kill this guy. All right, this is good. And so I went through this whole process, and I wasn't sad, and at weird times I wasn't like I was like ball inside, and I just didn't know what to do. And I have a theory. The longer I do this, the more of a theory that I get is that if we can somehow make people self-aware that how they're responding and how they're acting and how they're feeling is not, if it's out of bounds for them, they need to look within themselves. And then the other side of it is, I again, this is only leading back to my own story, is that everybody around you, like, I would hate to put this responsibility on anybody, but it was true in my case. My wife was not having this. This is not normal, and we can't live our lives this way. That I need to find help. So, which Carolyn, and I'm sure that you went through this with Alex. Like everybody, rallied around and we tried to get there. And it's not always going to be successful, but the it has to start there. It has to start with the person understanding what's happening to them.
Right.
Because if you don't come into this job ready to go, okay, if I start acting weird, if I start getting crazy, if I want to start fighting people, or if I just start crying out of nowhere, I gotta get help. But here's the caveat. And I don't mind saying this in a public forum. I don't trust that the psychological industry knows how to deal with this. I think there's a few of them. But the biggest thing that scares me to death is, and now Alex is yet another friend, that as soon as they got put on meds, it was, it numbs you out. It numbs you out to, remember that cloud I was telling you about? That cloud only becomes thicker, and you cannot see anything but your own reflection. And if you can't see anybody else, then it makes all of that stuff possible. It makes it almost a foregone conclusion, because you're numbed out to the rest of the world, and that's not the answer. It's absolutely not the answer.
Yeah. And I love that you're, saying that, because that's what I feel too. I feel like the way you're explaining it it's just eye-opening to me. And it gives me, like probably an idea of what he was going through with the whole fog and stuff like that. Like he was disconnecting from us for months, you know, and as soon as he got on those meds, I'm telling you, it was like night and day. And what he did, and he had people around him. We knew like something was up. He was going to therapy.
Yes.
Never did I imagine that he would do something like this. But I truly feel like those meds can either, it's a very fine line, you know, and depending on where you're at, it can go south very fast.
I really believe you cannot treat PTSD like clinical depression. You can, and that's the default. Is that, you know, we're upset and we're doing all these things, but there are other modalities out there ahead of time, and in conjunction with that can help you get through this. It's long before the meds. I'm firmly convinced I would have gone through with it had I been numbed out, because all I needed was that little bit more of a fog, just that little bit, that little bit. I just needed them to be, everybody to be a little bit more distant, where I couldn't see them anymore, being in a closed room, you know, and I like, now I can plan, you know, like it's so devastating to know that we've had multiple wars. We've had an industry that is opening up, and I think we're just now on the cusp of getting this right. You know, but it takes, you know, like how we've been at war for, you know, we were at war for 25 years. So like, that's one thing. An extended war like that, it's not like, you know, Vietnam was the longest war before that, you know, but, you know, so that's thousands of people that were in the military that had to have these hits. And then we have an entire industry with major disasters. That's what we do. And to be honest with you, I still wouldn't trade this job for anything in the world.
Yeah, no, it's a great career.
Being an adrenaline junkie, and it's just like, it's like, okay, throw me in the middle of chaos. But I now know, and this is an analogy that I try to pass on to the new guys and people who are having problems, is that I've had to paint it like this to my head: is imagine that you buy a house, right? You buy this big, beautiful house, and then you move into it. The caveat is, when you buy this house, you move into it and you can't leave. You just have to stay there, but it's got everything you would ever need in that house. And then you find out the house is haunted. And you go, okay, the house is haunted. You have two choices at that point. And there's a lot of ghosts, and more ghosts keep showing up every day. Every day that you go to work, more ghosts show up. And you go, okay, I have two choices. One, I can be afraid of the ghost and I can run and hide anywhere in this house I could possibly move to get away from the ghosts. Or two, I can become friends with the ghosts and realize that more ghosts are going to show up as long as I do this job. And it's a very rational, it helps to paint a rational thought process behind it, is that there's some ghosts that are lighter than others. You know, some ghosts are like, oh, you know, you're just a little scary. And then there's the really malevolent ones that want to attack you. And you can just go, oh, boo, you got me. Okay. All right. You jumped out of the corner. I wasn't ready for you, but I knew you were there. You got me. And that's maybe one way that people can, you know, and help to internalize it, that realizing that every face that you see, every near-death experience that you have, it is ingrained permanently into your brain. And as long as you realize that it is permanently there, there are ways that you can help to mitigate this. One of the things that I learned early on the hard way, I learned this the hard way because I can still see the face, is to stop looking at faces of people who have passed. That is, your loved ones is one thing. In a casket, your loved ones, you want to see that face. But people that you're running calls on, curiosity, or you're looking. Faces have a way to ingrain themselves permanently in your brain like nothing else. You can look at a ton of arms, legs, toes, you name it, and they don't burn themselves into your brain like somebody's face does. And that is one thing that I absolutely pass on to anybody and everybody I can get my hands on. Do not limit the amount of faces that you look at. It's not like you can't look at faces. Some people are going to have head injuries, some face injuries. So there's certain, but limit the amount of faces, and never ever go to a call and come out of the procedure. And what I mean by that is when we go to a call, we are in the mode of step one, we do this, step two, we do that. And if this happens, we're going to go over there and plan A, B, C, and D. But the minute the call simmers down and you're still there, you cannot turn back into a human being, because it is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. You become, the minute you become a normal person on that call as a voyeur, it's devastating. It's one thing for people in Only and Dade to go by with their camera, and because that may be the one thing they ever see in their entire life.
Exactly.
But you're going to go to 4 or 5 more of these that day, at least. You
have to be a robot. It's almost like you guys need to be robots.
We're trained individuals. So we are trained on how to work this call. Regardless of what it is, we're trained on how to adjust, work, improvise, adapt, and overcome all the things that we've ever been taught over and over and over again. There's a reason when you're in the academy that they yell at you the entire time. It's to put you under stress, and so you can recall the procedures on how to do it. But you cannot turn that off on the call. And you're still going to go back with some ghosts. You are. That doesn't get rid of the ghosts. But the minute that I've ever become a human being on, like a normal human being on a call, has been detrimental to my mental health completely.
So teaching her to be more self-aware, like what affects you, because everyone's affected differently.
Correct.
So I think that's huge, just having, self-awareness.
And getting people to identify, I think just starting with the basics of making sure that you are looking inwards constantly, and it's constant. And when I say it's constant, it can sound exhausting, but it is so important. I have to look at myself daily, like minute by minute. Even sitting here talking to you guys, I've already evaluated myself 4 or 5 times. But once you start doing it, it becomes almost habitual in a way. But teaching people how to start evaluating themselves on a daily basis. Am I right? Am I not right? What am I doing am I working out? Can I go play golf? Can I go ride my bike? What can I do to help bring this down a little bit? And sometimes it's just, there's smaller hits, and you can just do those things and immerse yourself in those things. But then there's times when you're just going, there's something really wrong with me. I am not responding well at all to anything. Like, I'm losing my shit on everybody. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And you might not even see it at first, but everybody being open and as family and friends to go, hey, I don't know what that was about, but we got to figure this out. And those are the big cues, for you. So
No, absolutely. I think, like yoga helps a lot, just connecting again with your mind and body, things like that, exercise. I have to do it daily too, all the time, because I got to look at my cup half full versus half empty
Yes.
all day, or forget it. I'll go south real fast too. So that's true. And I know that. I know every day I have to get up, get ready. I have to do the things that I need to do that I know are going to bring me to a better place.
Yes.
And I think people being more mindful and self aware and know what serves them and what doesn't serve them. And sometimes people around you don't serve you. Sometimes it's just that you're tired and you need a nap,
Right.
or you haven't eaten,
Right.
things like that. Yeah.
It's terribly difficult to be positive.
Yes.
It takes a lot of effort, and I try to pass this on to as many people as possible. Is that you, you it takes so much effort to be positive. It's so easy to fall to the negative. It's easy for us to figure out what we don't have and what we're not getting, or why things haven't lined up perfectly for us. It's so easy to go down that road, and I don't know why as human beings we're built that way. But one of the things that I cannot, and my wife knows this, is one of the things I cannot default to is negativity. I cannot keep going. I can deal with a little bit of negativity,
Yes.
but I can't keep going with the negativity. I start to boil inside, and that we all have that. My dad, I can't believe I'm going to say this but my dad has a saying, and it's when we go from Sweet William to Bad Bill, and it's a very corny statement, but at the same time, it's one of those things where we all have that inner rage inside of us, and for me at this point, I know it's there. I know that guy is always there, and he's waiting to get out of the cage. And negativity will only serve to make that guy come out faster. And nobody deserves that guy. Nobody deserves that guy. Even
No
my
one
worst
deserves.
enemy doesn't deserve what's going to come out. And I know that.
Yeah.
Do you, and Mark, I'm sure you do, but have you thanked your wife? Have you had that deep conversation? Like, you?
I I I think so. But like the more I talk about it, the more I realize that um, maybe I haven't had that conversation, and maybe I should watch this podcast. And thanks, honey.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Maybe you should, because I think that's the other thing too. And listen, it's not just you, and it's a lot, right? It's a lot watching someone who you love struggle
Right.
with things, especially some stubborn firefighters, because you guys definitely have a certain personality.
Yes.
And I think it takes a lot to run a house, to keep up with everything, whether it's children or no children, it doesn't matter. And then to genuinely worry about that person. So just, I'm just thinking about the spouses out there. Like she found strength that I never thought about any of this until Carolyn and I started working together.
Right.
And God, I hate what happened, but thank God that I'm talking about this now. So your wife was able to find that, thank God, earlier.
Yeah, she was, and her and I. The reason we've been together for 27 years is because we've always been able to talk things through, and that was the one time we couldn't. We've always been able to, and she, I don't think she likes, and I'm just guessing, but I don't think she likes. She might have an image of the way that I am, and when I'm not that person, there's something wrong. And so to this day, she's constantly going, "Are you okay?" Like if I get snappy with anything, she'll go, "Everything all right?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, Yes,
So,
I'm allowed to be snappy about that, or whatever. But then she brings me back to thinking about, am I all right? I don't know. Should I be all right? Like so she definitely, keeps me in check that way.
I just want to bring this point up one more time before we wrap things up. Jason and I were watching TV the other day and we laughed at it, and it's not funny. When I tell you guys, every single commercial was for some sort of antidepressive drug, and they were different commercials. It wasn't the same commercial airing. You know what I mean? There was this variety, and I mean, we were probably watching like Dateline or something.
Right.
Psycho. I love those shows, but that's what was being aired. And then you were talking about the EMDR. Carolyn, you and I talk about the EMDR all the time. It's like, where's the EMDR commercial? Where's the TMS commercial? Where's the commercial for these other kids?
Because they don't make a whole lot of money.
No, but I'm just saying, like, but it's just, as you were saying that, and then you did what I think you said, one session of EMDR that wasn't even a long, drawn out session. Bam. But meantime, we're just pounding people with all of this crap.
Correct. Capitalism can run amok in our daily lives and make us believe that we need these things to be right. Like EMDR is not the only thing I've ever done. After Surfside, I did ISIS, which is a bunch of electrodes on your head and evening the waves out in your brain. Unfortunately, it's not as easily accessible anymore, but it was fantastic. It takes a little bit more, and it just kind of gets you, it was kind of like a refresher for me, like just to even things out. Surfside was pretty bad. And you spend enough time, when a call goes for 8 days for a person, or for a fire department, it was a month. That stuff will level you. So if you don't have these avenues and all these other modalities to try, and again, they're not necessarily going to work. I mean, I was very lucky that EMDR worked for me right out of the chute. I mean, maybe it had something to do with it was still so acute. I was still in this early phase. I think the longer PTSD goes, the more hardened it sticks in your brain, because I can feel it. I can feel there are certain things that are always going to be there. Again, the haunted house. They're always going to be there, and there's things that are never going to be resolved, but that's okay. It's that's coming to that realization that things are going to be in your head that are not going to be resolved is okay. It's the side effect. Everybody in every job has something that they carry with them, no matter what it is. This is just ours, but I think our perspective on how we see it is everything.
Yeah. Mark, this has been fantastic. Thank you for being so open and honest with us.
Anytime, anything I can do to help it, or I don't know if I helped, but
help somebody.
Yeah, someone. I think just having this conversation and just being human, talking about your experiences, what you did, what helped you, what didn't help you. It's not only helping a first responder, it's helping their spouses too, because we also need to be a little more involved as much as we can, because we, at least for me too, like I respected that. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Okay. You don't have to talk about it.
Right.
Now, if I would do things differently, I'd be like, no, shit, we're going to talk about it. Like,
right.
What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? I want to go to therapy with you. I want to be more involved. And I want a spouse who is in that position that I was to be more proactive, I don't want this
to know that it absolutely, like when I first got to Miami-Dade, there was a lady, her name was Natalie Durant. She when you got out of the academy, right before you were graduating, she would come in and she would talk to the whole class, and she would talk to, on family night, she would talk to, the spouses and stuff like that. And she would kind of give an overview that, hey, you're going to see some crap here. And, and she would kind of make the family somewhat aware. But the family dynamics for everybody is different, right? So, like, some people take more of a background to it. Some people are more, involved. It's just it depends on. This depends on everybody firing on all cylinders in order for this to be a successful career, and to be able to come out the other side. Like that's. Yeah, I've been saying this now for years. We have to survive the career, and it used to be physically. You had to survive. You had to make sure you didn't get cancer and heart attack, and your body wasn't broken or whatever else. But now it's physically and mentally, because there are plenty of our retirees. We just had one, Marc Chavers. He's been retired 2 or 3 years, and like. That nozzleman that was on that fire in Homestead, 6 months after he retired. 6 months. His name was Randy Wise. And the guy had amassed, he had worked his butt off to make his pension the best it could be, like his whole career, in 6 months. And it's, the whole idea is to yes, do this job, have a blast with it. It is a fantastic career. It really is. Some of the stuff that we've been able to do, and just the things that I've been witness to, have been just phenomenal. Just really over the top stuff. But you gotta. There is an endpoint, and you have to embrace that endpoint, and you have to embrace the fact that, okay, I'm going to become a person again. I'm going to become a person again, and I got to get out the other side.
Mark, with that said, you're 34 years in the fire service. Mm-hmm. How many more years do you have? And what are you doing to prepare for that moment when it's done?
Nothing. No.
No, you better. This is what we're trying to do here too. That's not acceptable.
My plan is I'm probably going to do about 4.5 more years in the drop, and then my plan is to continue to teach. I teach incident command for Palm Beach State College right now, and I do like to teach. So it's one of those things that, and there's only so much golf you can play. There's only so much mountain biking you can do. And one of my other mentors, I teach with him, and he retired. I think it was like 7 or 8 years ago now. His name is Brian Anderson. And he, he's gone through his own struggles, with this, and he didn't want to leave the job. Like, he's still to this day, he wants to be in a job, but, at 70 years old, he's like, I know I can't do the job, but how do I contribute? And I think that's probably going to be me that way, and so you have to set yourself up for what's next. I asked another friend of mine a while back. He was going to retire, and he's my age, and he was about to retire. He started with corrections real early, again 19 years old, and he had reached the end of the drop. And I said, "So what's your plan?" And he goes, it's just a long deep breath, and he goes, I think I just got to figure out how to be retired, because I don't know what that even looks like. And so what did he do? He went and bought himself a red Corvette and drove around, but then shortly came back, and he became a civilian inspector for the fire department, just to do something on the side. And like a lot of people trash people who do that, or they come back. Why would you want to come back here? Like, everybody's so interested in leaving until it's time to leave. And this has become, this is the only thing I know how to do as an adult. I dug some ditches when I was a kid. I did some roofing work when I was a teenager, only to find out that that's not for me. Um, this is all I know how to do. So, and there's a lot of us like this that and unfortunately, some people make this their identity,
Right.
and that is another very slippery slope. When this becomes your identity, and it is, it's all of our identity, but when it becomes the only thing that you live for, that's another issue that they have to work out. How do you put that little retired thing underneath your patch, or put the union sticker on the back that says retired, that kind of stuff. I'm no longer part of the equation anymore. And you gotta come to grips with that too. But again, family
Be
is
a great speaker, a motivational speaker, like at least in, mental health, that would be something to tap into. I think, go around and talk and tell your story.
yeah, and I think that's that's something I'm interested in as well. And the more that we have this sort of groundswell thing going on, and again, Surfside was a terrible, terrible night. When we got there, and the things that we had to do, I had to put people in harm's way. And I remember one of the people saying, one of the firefighters saying, "Chief, can that building come down with us in it?" And I didn't hesitate, and I said, "Absolutely, it can. It absolutely can. If you cannot muster the energy to go in there, stand back. Nobody will fault you for it." And I told this to the whole group before they went in, and I was thinking to myself, "My God, I'm sending these people in this building, and it's if this thing gets any worse, anybody dies here, anybody gets hurt, I don't know how I'm going to come through this." And you're already thinking those things, ahead of time. But thank God for Surfside, because it touched not only our organization, it touched every organization in Dade County, multiple organizations in Broward County. It touched well over, I would say, 1,500 of our members. So it was such a big thing that we had to do something. And we had to do something. We had to change the dynamics. And we're still feeling the outward effects of this to last month. And if we don't continue to push and push and push to get this point across, and again, going back to the original thing that we were talking about, letting people know what they're in for, how to deal with it, finding ways to put it almost in a procedure to where this is what you're going to have to practice for the rest of your career. This is no less of a skill than tying knots. You tie knots and you self-evaluate. You put up a ladder, you self-evaluate. You pull a hose line, self-evaluate. That, I think, getting that out early as almost a mandate. I don't know how we get there, but
Well, it's like when they put you on a 10 for training, you need to get put on a 10 for this. Regular training, regular mental wellness training.
Right. And when like one of the things that kind of stood out to me is when the police have a shooting, most police agencies, when they put them on administrative leave, a lot of them have to do mandatory psychological evaluation. We don't have that. We don't shoot each other either, but but still,
it's still a traumatic event, though. It's still a big event, impactful event.
Right. But there is no current avenue for this. There is no current mandate to say you're doing this, now you go to that.
Right. A lot's being done. A lot still needs to be done. I truly believe that these conversations are making a difference and will make a bigger difference down the road. I'm going to wrap things up there, Mark, but I do want your wife's email. So I want you to email it to me, because Carolyn, I think she would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah, she probably has a whole lot more to say than I do.
Listen, we often do. We often do as wives. So Marc Chavers,
Chief. I do want to say
Go ahead.
Before we go, I just wanted to thank you guys for this is actually a great thing. This is really a great thing that you guys are doing. Like Carolyn, I'm hoping that this helps you heal as well. That was devastating to all of us. And the thing that you guys are doing here, I think it has major rippling effects far and wide. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We remind everybody at the end of the show that if you see something, whether it's your spouse or whether it's somebody else, to sound the alarm.
Save a life.